this is exciting for me because really, when I read the book, I loved it, and I was really angry because it's a great story that I think I wanted to write, and everybody else who lived in China and had these experiences wanted to write, and you guys, beat everybody to it in a great way. So that's exciting. Sam and Eric, how did you well, first off, introduce yourselves because you're going to do a better job of it than I am. So Sam Voutas, you're a filmmaker from Australia. You were in China during all this, and Eric Flanagan, you're now based in Manila, but originally from the U.S. Sam, give us the 1,000-foot view of your career.
Sure. It's probably similar to Eric. I was a filmmaker in my early 20s and was struggling to find a career in Australia, so moved to China. In the early 2000s, China was a really exciting place to be a young creative, whether it was cameraman work or just any type of work. There seemed to be lots of possibilities. And it was around that time that I met Eric. It was around 2005, 2006, Eric, that we met in Beijing.
Yep. Yeah, 2005.
Yep. Eric was editing a documentary that he'd shot in Singapore, and he asked me we just had a dinner, and he asked me to help out, and one day of helping editing turned into almost a month. And
yeah, which
gotcha.
Probably turned into 2 months or something. Went forever.
And so Eric, you were a filmmaker, but give us a little bit of the background of what brought you to China.
Yeah, so I was living in New York and kind of making my way in the indie film scene and like the reality TV scene. Got a gig where I could shoot. So I'd already been to Southeast Asia through, in the East on my own traveling. And so I went back there to make a documentary, and I ended up in Beijing with a production company that I was staying there and editing in their facility. And then I met Sam that way through mutual friends. Was it Thomas?
Yeah.
Sam, is that?
Frankel, yeah, so, Singaporean friend.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Introduced us, and the rest is history. We've kept in touch ever since, and we would, trade ideas on things we thought would make good stories. And this ended up kind of surfacing as the one that ended up leading to this long-term collaboration.
We're going to have to set up quickly, but pre-Olympics China, pre-2008 China was a bizarro time, to say the least. Everybody who had a camera was going to go there. Everybody who had a camera got work. And to kind of jump into this, everybody there who was of our complexion on the lighter side had the opportunity to teach, and had the opportunity to be an actor, and had the opportunity to do literally anything because there were not a lot of foreign faces in China. It was still not the easiest place to get into. And, you were something special.
Yeah. It was a bizarre time. I remember a couple of months after I first got to Beijing in 2005, as somebody offered me a free office at 798, which was the heart of the art, the art center of Beijing, and they just gave me an office that had a glass door, and I realized that they just wanted me to be there so that I could be seen, so that the office could appear to have a foreigner working there. And that was pretty much my first introduction to this idea of what was considered good face. And I think that's what, Eric and I were very fascinated with this idea, because it's not like when I was, say, at the office that I was actually doing anything at the office or I was helping the company in any way. I was simply there for this very superficial facade, essentially. And Eric and I have always been really fascinated with the idea of facades, and that sometimes if it's just a surface level, there's nothing much behind it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of a strange thing. I mean, the book you wrote is called White Face Lies, and it talks about the concept of face jobs. I don't know who came up with the concept of face job, but it's really a great name. I mean, I don't know. It perfectly explains it.
I thought you came up with that phrase, because the first
No,
time I ever
no.
heard it was from you, which was 2009.
No. So I think somebody had told me about it, and it was. I think all of us were like, "This is just absurd. You can't be telling me that someone's going to pay me money to show up and be a foreigner that stands there and does things or nothing most of the time." But Eric, who explain your interaction or your discovery of these face jobs.
Well, so I had been, at the time the story idea came about, I was living in Singapore, and I had spent time, sort of ping-ponging around different cities in Asia. And so I was aware of the situation in China. I think this face job stuff is very specific to China. You don't see it as much in countries around Southeast Asia.
Okay.
So that that uniquely special and undeserved treatment of white people is like unique to inside the mainland. I read an article about it. It was like some online article, and I ran it by Sam. I was like, wow, do you know about this? This is crazy. Like, this is bizarre. Like, this sounds fascinating. There's a story in this. And Sam was like, yeah, I'm actually been doing this work. I've been face jobbing for a book for like research. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. That's awesome. And but by then I think, Sam, you had already kind of run out of steam on that angle, right? And so, and I was looking for something to write in terms of a screenplay. And so we were like, let's just make a story within that world. So that's how I got involved with it.
Well, I mean, I know how I got involved in it, and it was, I think it was just an ad on a foreign website for foreigners in Asia website, and had dug around in the job boards of weird things to do, like voiceover and acting and things like that. That was just the thing that everybody who had gone to China got a chance to do. And I think I had come across that and read some people going, oh, you can do this thing, and I did a couple, and then Sam and I, we were having dinner, and you were like, that's not real. And I'm like, no, I just did this thing, and and you ran with it, which I am again wholly upset and jealous of. That you went and took this. You went full Hunter S. Thompson on this. I mean, what was the reason behind you stealing this greatest idea?
Well, first off, I want to apologize for not being totally honest with you, because you gave me the contact in order to enter that world, and I never told you.
No, hey, that's fine with me. Please, just remember, I get 1 cent of every screenplay. That's it. That's all I need. Just one penny. That's it.
That's not much money, trust me.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, seriously.
I thought it was really fascinating, and you'd mentioned it, and I remember sitting at the table thinking, this is going to be somebody's going to be really interested in this world. And I'd been reading sillily, being very naive. I'd finished Hell's Angels, and I thought, well, Hunter S. Thompson did it, and he got a little recorder, and he went undercover. I'm sure anybody can do this. And I learned very quickly that wasn't the case. So I did about 5 jobs, had a little hidden recorder with me, and then afterwards, I didn't have the guts to keep on doing it, to be honest. Because,
well, explain that first job, because the idea of face job is you're supposed to show up, and there's different versions of it. And when you read your guys' graphic novel, it's very you've laid out very specifically what it is. But from my experience and what a lot of people will find online is you're hired to be an executive, a person who stands there in a suit who could be from the company or not. You're just a foreign person in the group of important people. And you get paid for that, and you oftentimes don't talk. You just sit there and smile sweetly. What were some of your experiences with it? What was like one of your first jobs you did?
One of the first jobs I did was to be the second in command of an American company.
Apparently, your accent really does speak Boston. Is it Boston? It's South Boston, right?
It's South Boston. It was a big mix. My neighborhood in Boston was really mixed up. They watched too many Crocodile Dundee movies back in those days, in the 80s. The first job, they gave me a name. They told me that I had just flown in from a certain city. I can't remember the name, whether it was like New York or what. They told me if they ask particular questions, don't answer, change the topic or defer. My job really was just to turn up and nod and make sure that I wore a really nice suit, a good suit and tie, and look professional, and that's it. And then afterwards go home.
Oh, man,
there's not much to it.
Yeah. That was my experience with it, and I think so many people's other experience where it just became just this weird, wacky, bar story to tell. And I know some people took it seriously. I know some people it became their lifeblood. I think for most of it was like, nah, just check it off the list.
That's right. On that particular gig, that there was a full-time face job, a gentleman in his 60s, American, who this was just what he did every day. And for him, it was just another gig, read the lines, move on to the next one. And there were particularly, white men who were in their 60s to 70s living in China at the time. There were those guys who that was just their full-time deal.
Sure.
They would just go from 4-star hotel to 4-star hotel, traveling around China.
So, as we're saying this, it obviously is a great story with a lot of potential and a lot of you can go anywhere with this. So how did the two of you guys, were you working together at this point, or was it just kind of independent kismet that came about, Eric? How did that work for you?
Well, I think there was when Sam and I decided let's try to build a story in this world. Sam came down to Singapore. I think that was the first trip. And we really just spent like a few days trying to hammer out possible stories that resonated, that we liked. And when we landed on the one that ended up becoming the current book, we latched onto that, and after that, it was still in terms of like Skyping and Zooming and teleconferencing, all that technology was still quite slow. This was still like 2010, 2011. Is that correct, Sam?
2010 we started in 2010.
Right. And so we did actually a lot of like flying back and forth. It's actually kind of insane and expensive to think about now. But I went up to Beijing, I think, a couple times. Sam went to Singapore a couple times. And then we eventually ended up also writing drafts in Bangkok and Manila and Los Angeles as the years went on, as the decades upon decades dragged on.
Yeah, well, we're going to come back to how long it took,
right.
But
yeah.
Was it always a book, or was it what was the product, so to speak, that you guys were originally trying to create?
Well, Sam, can I jump in on this one?
Go for
real
it.
Fast?
Yep.
Yeah. So I had made a short film at NYU Tisch graduate film program that I was at in Singapore. And that got some attention at the Sundance Labs, and they were like, hey, do you have any scripts that you can submit? And so this story and my conversations with Sam sort of happened about the same time that Sundance was asking for something for us to give them. And I thought, well, this is, this'll do. And so we so we wrote a screenplay version of it, which is, it's definitely, there's a lot of similarities, but it's also quite different than the current story. And and then we got it into Sundance, the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, and we went into that and workshopped it. And then the current version of the book was born out of that experience being there at Sundance. And then, the next step to turn it into a graphic novel kind of came about actually out of an idea of Sam. Sam, you were the one who kind of said, hey, let's turn this into some actual IP, right?
Yeah. We'd finished the labs and we had this script, and Eric and I were just discussing how are we going to feasibly shoot this in China? It's going to be quite difficult. Just both in terms of the content of the story and also just the logistics. We have scenes where there's big factories with lots of extras, and we realized also the state of independent film, and this is like 2012 now, we'd have to get name American actors, and we just thought, are we going to be able to get hold of the name American actors to appear? So we started this long discussion about how do we turn this story into intellectual property, because a screenplay is great, but it's a blueprint, and neither of us had any experience really doing any other thing other than filmmaking. We never discussed reality TV, right? We could have done a reality TV show.
Yeah, exactly. That probably wouldn't have lasted that long, though. I don't think you would have gotten a few episodes out of that. That would have that would have been a little dangerous. But that's interesting that you thought, okay, we're going to make a film, and then realized, well, this is unfilmable. How quickly did you start thinking about other ideas? I mean, because there's the book idea, like let's make a novel or an actual book, which, at that point, everybody who's been anywhere in the world has a book idea. And then, of course, in China, post-Olympics, everybody had a book about China because so many people went to China. And you touched on the idea of IP. Explain that thinking, because that's a very high level business thought thing, like I'm going to make some IP, but not something you shouldn't be thinking of. I mean, it seems like an important part of the process.
I guess it does sound complicated, but at the same time, it's just proving the product that you're trying to sell that it is quality, essentially. And when it comes to a screenplay, it's all, people might flip through it really fast. It's up to people's imaginations. It's not actually a thing that is as tangible as a product per se.
Okay.
And so yeah, just I think. I was saying to Eric, we really should try to make this either a novel, but then neither of us had experience writing novels. We weren't really those type of guys in China. We were more visual people, and so yeah, I think we both decided we'd turn it into a panel by panel graphic novel.
Right, and the story is so visual anyway. Like, I think one thing that was so appealing about it was it was always conceived to be kind of a road trip movie, but in mainland China through second tier cities. So cinematically, what we were always attracted to was this being able to just show people and see things that you usually don't see in a film. A story that takes you through this really insane, countryside with beautiful geography and giant cities and like crazy industry, and it's just all this really great visual stuff. So it would have been so for me, the idea of a graphic novel seemed a lot more appealing, and also we're on firmer ground in terms of having a sort of filmmaking background. It felt like it's something we could manage a little better than just becoming book authors. And then also just the idea of we worked really hard on the story, and it would have been a shame for the screenplay to end up on a hard drive somewhere forever, right? We wanted it to become something no matter what. And then like Sam said, times have changed so fast in China since the time we started writing it to the time we were thinking about the screenplay was done. The feasibility of shooting it there had changed, right?
That's right. In the space of 2 years.
Yeah, and I got to say, I mean, the graphic novel. I'm not a graphic novel person. I didn't really read comic books a lot, but you're right. I mean, the visual aspect of China at the time and even now, there's so much visual absurdity and like, how is this all there? It's like it's Blade Runner and it's a desert, and then it's a Blade Runner in a desert and a shopping mall. And it's just, how the visual panels and cells you guys created really was gorgeous and beautiful. And so that makes sense that a graphic novel would have to be the starting point. But in that Sundance workshop, what were some of those things? What were some of the things that helped you with? What was the benefit of that, or was it a benefit?
Sam, you want to?
Eric, do you want to? Well, we were incredibly lucky to have the types of advisors that we had at the Sundance Labs. You're getting the smartest, most talented screenwriters on the planet to sit down and read your script, not once, but twice, and give you detailed feedback, sometimes line by line. And they were very generous to let us to record the session so we could listen, so we could play it back time and time again and discuss what changes we wanted to be made. But yeah, each advisor would have different, really good advice. And then it was just Eric and I deciding, well, we could go these multiple ways. This is all good advice. What do we want to do? And that's where this new version came out. The book, the version that is essentially seated in this graphic novel.
But no offers at the end.
Of no sales or
no sales. No one ready. All right, let's go. Nothing.
No. Well, it wasn't finished. We felt like we wanted to finish it and turn it into something.
Okay. Come on. You have that. You say Sundance. I'm like, and Robert Redford didn't walk in and go, "Let's go, gents."
And say, walk through this door.
Oh well. Next time. When you decided, okay, graphic novel, you're looking at your IP. Well, we're not going to do a book. We're not book authors, which is a whole other challenge. You got a screenplay, so it does make sense. From a screenplay, you're both directors and with and editors, so storyboards make sense. Graphic novels is a thing. How long did it take you guys to go into that graphic novel space, and how did you jump into that world, which is so niche?
I think we jumped into it as only people who know nothing can do.
Right. I think our first priority really was, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was really like, okay, so who's gonna draw this thing? Like, we got to find someone to do. We can't do that. And so I guess this sort of leads naturally into a discussion about our illustrator and how we found our illustrator. But like, that was maybe the first big step, right? Is to team up with the right partner to illustrate the book. And we really lucked out. Like, we found maybe the most perfect person for this exact book to illustrate it. Yeah, Sam, you want to talk about a little, right?
Yeah, Timothy McEvenew, who's a Canadian illustrator. He was based in Beijing at the time, working for a lot of the newspapers. And Bob, as you say, it's just there were so many particular elements to live life in China at that time that if you didn't live there, you wouldn't be able to pick those things up. And Tim just filled those images with all these particular details that if we'd written it in words, it just wouldn't have come across the same way.
Oh wow! I mean that seems like even more kismet. The three of you guys had all this Asia experience and were able to put it all together into one cohesive thing. I mean that doesn't happen a lot.
And that's why one of the reasons why it just took so long. We had to take the screenplay, then convert it into a format that Timothy could access and then we had Eric and I had to learn about panels and what type of panels we wanted the book to have. There was all these rules. We were basically learning 101, just graphic novel 101.
So just heading out to the store and buying nothing but books and comic books and just going nuts.
We were looking at a lot of different samples and say, do we want our book to be more like this or like this? Look how the artwork is done. A big conversation that we had was do we do black and white? Do we do color? There's so many different directions you can go once you do a graphic novel. And then also making sure, and Tim also had to create the characters, because unlike film where you hire an actor and that actor is going to be who he or she is, Tim had to create the looks of these characters from scratch. So that took some time too.
And Eric, I mean, how did that work? I mean, how did you guys then? You both come from different backgrounds. You've got different perspectives of it. Sam, you lived in China. Eric, you had visited China, but lived in Asia. How did you guys start crafting this? What were some of the influences you pulled from to create the visuals, or to at least guide the visuals?
Right. Well, again, we literally had no idea what we were doing. And so we had to, I think we made early on the choice stylistically, like one thing that we were attracted to, which is another reason why Tim was great, was we didn't really want it to feel like a Marvel or we didn't want to make a comic book looking graphic novel. We wanted it to have a very distinct visual style, and we thought the way we could achieve that is finding an illustrator who has a unique personal style, and that was Tim. And so when we found him, we were like, okay, this is our guy. So that like really kind of checks those boxes. And so then, like Sam said, we had to create the characters, and that was a whole process. And really the bulk of the time that we spent on the graphic novel was really just converting it to rewriting it as frames. So it was just like frame by frame, a miniature description, which basically tripled the size of our script or something, Sam. Like it really made it really just became a different, like an intermediate step, like a conversion step that I guess if you're just, if we had not written a graphic novel, if we had not written a screenplay originally, I guess that would have been the first thing we'd do. So that conversion step was arduous, and then we would make revisions to the story throughout the process, which would affect the art. And then there were times when we, because we, getting these pages illustrated is a long and expensive process, we would try to tell the stories the most efficiently we could and keep it as short as possible. But then there was a point where we realized it wasn't long enough. We didn't have enough frames. We needed to add more. So we realized, oh my God, we're going to add like 80 pages to this thing. So it was so it was like, really, we were learning as we went. I feel like now, Sam, if we were to do another novel, we'd probably get it done in 30% of the time rather than.
I think so. I think a lot of the rookie mistakes we got in the way. We got out of the way.
What were some of those things that were a surprise to you? I mean, if you're used to working with a screenplay, and if you're working with film, you're like, well, here's my establishing shot. We're going to get out of that really quick. I've got my action. If I've got people talking, I got my reverses. I got my over the shoulders. I got a couple close reactions. Maybe an insert. Boom, scene's done. Minutes out. 89 to go. What was some things that were different or surprising for you that you guys had to create from a graphic novel perspective?
Well, a similarity is that we used filmmaking language in our descriptions for Tim to follow. So, because I guess we didn't know any other way to talk about the images. So we would be like, medium over the shoulder or tight over the shoulder on so-and-so. And Tim would just magically make it all happen because we're all kind of imagining it like a movie. But in terms of surprises, Sam, what do you think? I don't know. I'm not
I had
sure.
one particular one that I thought was
just
really
how hard it
interesting.
was. I don't know.
In film, when you're editing, you can extend a particular shot in order to add more dramatic effect to that shot. And one of the surprises for us was that in a graphic novel, that's what the page turn does. That page turn is that little beat. So we started to realize, the last frame on a page, particularly when it's a page turn, can have that dramatic effect that you have in a film when you do a long beat on a cut.
Oh, interesting.
So we started working towards that.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, you would never think of that, where you have even old school techniques of a fade out.
That's right.
It's where I have a breath now. Now I'm
Yes.
turning the page, and then I guess the concept of two pages open is this giant plate of image and cacophony staring back at you. When you guys went to do that. What was the things that some of the stuff that Tim drew that or some ideas that he brought that you went, that doesn't make sense to me, but makes sense in the end? Or maybe didn't make sense to you at all. You're going, I guess, okay, he's a graphic novelist. Let's call it good. Because in a graphic novel, you're looking at a lot of single images, a third of the page that cover massive amounts of film time. Especially you've got this road trip concept. So you have, a couple of pages that would take 30 seconds on film, maybe a minute montage if we were being really cool, is one page, which a graphic novel, for me not being a graphic novel reader, it was like I flipped through it. I read the whole book in 20 minutes. What happened?
Yeah.
For you guys, how did you guys, the pacing? How did you guys figure out pacing on this?
It was really difficult to learn pacing because, as you said, a movie runs at a set speed, and trying to learn the speed at which one read a page. Often we'd only discover that the pacing was off once Tim would send us the roughs back. So we'd come up with that shot list, essentially a film shot list that we'd send to him, and then he'd send us the frames back, and we'd realize that, oh, this page runs a little bit too fast when you're reading it. And that's when we'd add a beat, like you add perhaps a frame of somebody thinking. And just that frame can extend the reading process. Also, the size of the frame can extend the reading process. If you just like you have a full strip across of somebody thinking, that's a substantial pacing beat right there. So there was a lot of that, and then there was also at the end editing, like cutting stuff out, where we realized, oh, we don't need a beat here. And this is where we gave Tim quite a big headache. Is like, Tim, do you mind removing this frame from the page? He's like, why didn't you tell me this at the beginning? Do you know how difficult this is?
Eric, what was some stuff that you thought that was a challenge? What were those things that you just went, I don't know if I want to do this anymore?
Yeah, I think it was just so after we kind of decided to lock our images and stop making Tim's life hell, and just sort of be like, okay, this is the artwork. We can't do any more drawing. We can't get any more pages illustrated. Then there became this phase of like, well, we can still change dialogue and we can still change what's written. And so that opened a door to, tweaking that could go on forever if you don't force yourself to stop. And so we went to this phase of just infinite tweaking of lines, and we had to like put down rules at one point. Like, we got to stop this. We have to just let this go at some point, because it was turning into a forever project, right, Sam?
And also because it's a collaboration, every single line is discussed at huge length between Eric and I. So,
argued and yeah.
I was gonna say, on a film, you go like, we ran out of money. There ain't no more tape. There ain't no more film. We're done. Right. Shut up. Right. But if you're just typing on a page, man, you can go for 14 years or whatever it was that you guys spent on this.
Also, film, you're limited by what you got on the day. So you might have different takes, but that's it.
That's it.
But for us, we could change the whole content of a scene just by changing a speech bubble.
Right.
Too much
it was
power,
like we went into ADR mode in post, but for like 3 years of ADR or something. I don't know.
No, just shoot it real wide. It'll be fine. We'll fix it.
Right.
The ultimate fix it in post project.
Right.
What were some of the influences that you guys started pulling from when you were writing this? Whether it be visual or the story, or even some of the graphic novels that you found. What was becoming the push or the influences for you to really get this visual idea down?
Well, Eric had a couple of copies of some Guy Delisle graphic novels, I remember. We felt that one of the reasons why he'd be good as a go-to is because he was a foreigner telling stories in Asia from a unique sort of perspective. Delisle did Shenzhen that we looked through, Eric, and then we had Pyongyang was another graphic novel that he did. And they were really helpful in terms of us just sort of learning what is a literary graphic novel as opposed to the kind of graphic
the
novels.
The pow bang.
Yeah,
boom.
That's right. The stuff that we'd read when we were teenagers.
What? Go ahead, Eric.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think we dove in without being real graphic novel connoisseurs, and I'm sure we're still not, but we know more now. But we probably our orientation was more coming from the world of film and thinking about visually and storytelling wise, probably thinking more in terms of directors we like or filmmakers we like. But in the future, we might, as we become more well versed in consuming graphic novels, those influences will creep in too. Because there's a lot of ways to do it, like Sam said, and like Tim even was wanting us to kind of unchain him and let him go crazy, and do some minimalist stuff and sketched out stuff where like there's no color and the frames go away. Like there's so many cool things you can do once you get into that world, where if you flip through some graphic novels, they're not laid out like frame by frame. You know, some are definitely by frame, but others it's like the frames disappear and all the images blur together. And so there's a lot of cool stuff you can do that we might try in the future. But for this first time out, our feet were definitely planted in the world of film and thinking about it in terms of almost like a storyboard, really. And I think that sort of shows.
It does. I mean, and it does read like the world's most gorgeous finished storyboard series or animatic.
Okay,
almost.
yeah, right.
Well, I mean, from somebody as not a graphic novel guy, and that's another question I have for you guys is, what did you find that was surprising? And Eric, you touched on some of this. You know, now you're graphic novel writers, and that's a whole nother world. What has surprised you about this new genre, this new medium that you're working in now?
Well, I'm still learning about it. I'm sure Sam, you are too. And there's probably a little bit of imposter syndrome here, like being called graphic novel authors. It's treading new ground here for ourselves. But yeah, I don't know. Sam, what do you think?
Ever since we started the process, I've certainly been buying a hell of a lot more graphic novels to read because,
Has it been
you only learn by reading.
Has it opened you up to a new world? I mean, are you meeting a different audience? Are you finding out that like, oh, this is there's more to this? Because it seems like, more adults always have read graphic novels.
I was going to say, this kind of circles back to what we were talking about before about IP. Like, since we've announced the book, some people have gotten in touch with me saying, hey, we are trying to do our own IP. And I think over the years, it's become more and more like a thing now. People realize everything that's getting made by production studios is all more or less based on some sort of IP, or at least, that's the trend. So it makes total sense. I think Sam was just early to kind of figure that out and adapt this strategy. We were probably got on a little earlier than most, but I think now it's sort of, a lot of people have done that math, and they're like, everyone is sort of rushing to try to turn their scripts into graphic novels or books. And I think there's a mad rush to find illustrators. So this is becoming a really common thing.
You've had some success, yes?
I'd say moderate success considering our level of experience, I suppose.
It's
certainly
selling.
not great success.
It's a great, it's very well. I mean, the final output is a legitimate, really nice graphic novel. You talked about, how it's kind of changing your thinkings and you want to do more of these. What's that mean? What does that look like from a career standpoint for you guys? How does that change, how you present ideas, how you think about your ideas? Now you're going, well, maybe we'll make this a graphic novel first, as opposed to, well, we've tried everything else. This seems like an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think we're looking at ways in which would a story fit better as a graphic novel than as a movie, and sometimes that's not the case. So Eric and I have got a huge pile of ideas, and we've been sitting down and saying, how about this idea? What do you reckon? TV series, feature film, graphic novel? And the ones that are going into the graphic novels, we're saying, oh yeah, that would really make a really cool graphic novel. Maybe it's set in space, or who knows. But there's particular reasons why it couldn't be it'd be difficult to be a feature film. Those are the ones that we're starting to develop. So it's, before we were storytellers, we were filmmaker storytellers. And I think the big shift over the last 12 years is that we have slowly become storytellers who are working in two different mediums at once. Whether we're telling them good or not, I don't know.
Right. It's a nice option to have, though, for sure. Like, we have now there's more we can do. And also there's the feeling of, it can become something without needing, $100 million to have it exist. Right.
And that's also one of the frustrating things about film, is that so often you write a script and it never becomes anything. Eric and I know so many writers who are like, yeah, I've got a whole shelf full of screenplays.
I was going to say that's like the rule. It's like you have to have, a lot of people graduate film school. It's like you need a dozen scripts in a dozen genres to prove that you can do this. Let alone, it's unpaid practice. For you guys now, when you are looking at something, go, yeah, this would make a great graphic novel. Is it exciting when you stumble across that, or is it like, okay, it's graphic novel time?
Eric,
I think it's I think I'm excited because now you don't like, when you work in indie film, and you have to be really resourceful, and you have to think, well, what is the coolest location I have free access to that I can build a movie around?
Right.
Who do I know that can be a great lead actor? You don't have to do that anymore. You can just be like, okay, it's gonna, if you were to, we can think up, a billion dollar production value concepts, and just be like, yeah, we just got to get, an illustrator now. So that's good. It's very freeing in that regard. Yeah.
especially in a COVID world where it's so much harder to be an independent filmmaker. If we want to set a movie in Tunisia, or a graphic novel in Tunisia, we can do that. We don't have to get on planes and deal with trying to get quarantine and all that stuff. We just start writing.
I was going to say, before all of us went into lockdown, you guys were doing it, as you said, remotely before it was cool. Has that made it?
What were we using Skype in the beginning, Sam, and the times when we actually couldn't be in the same city? Is that what we were doing?
That's right, yeah. So we started on Skype, and I'm not even sure Messenger was a big thing back in 2010. So back then, Skype allowed you to do, you could share screens. So we'd share a lot of screens of, our work back and forth. And then when we could, we'd try to fly. I think, Eric, it was about once a year, right? We'd fly roughly about once a year, try to do a big, say, 1 week session where we just worked all day or all night and then crashed.
Right. In those sessions, like, we would cover so much more ground than if we were doing it remotely. Like, just being locked in a room with like a bunch of sticky notes on a wall, and just became like, boot camp or prison camp for writing. And we wouldn't let ourselves out until we had, a finished draft. And it was really hard, but we covered way more ground that way. It would have taken even longer if we weren't able to do that.
Yeah. And it was handy to have deadlines too, because we'd say, I'm only staying with Eric for a week. We now have 1 week to try and get something done that's tangible.
And so, right. And we'd have that's how I remember story versions. It's like, oh, that's the Bangkok story version. Oh, that's the Manila story version. That's the LA version. So that's how I'd mentally think about our drafts. But if we were if we were going to do this again, it would not. I really hope it wouldn't take another 2 decades. It's got to be faster. It would. I believe it would be faster.
But now the collaboration seems simpler. It's not so much of a slog to do this remote thing, or obviously we all want to see each other face to face. But is it gotten easier or more feasible in the creative idea? Or the creative process?
I mean, certainly we're so used. We're so used to doing the Skype or Messenger calls, so that's just second nature to us. But I do think that when we can travel internationally again, Eric and I will still have to find some place to hammer out for a week. Yeah,
hunker down.
Put
out 200 pages.
That's right. Yeah. Because there's still something, being in the same room is different than, say, doing one Zoom a week. It's very different. And you can reach a level of intensity with the work that you can't do via Zoom. Zoom its very nature can be tiring, but if Eric and I are in the room for 12 hours, we are going to go to some places. And it's going to get pretty crazy. And often that leads us to story places that we never thought about, just because of the intensity of working together for so many hours a day.
And just no distractions either. Even if we were doing a Zoom call a day, our brains would, be distracted by a million other things. So if we lock ourselves in a hotel and create a story wall, then it's basically we're locking ourselves in a writer's room and we can focus.
Okay. When you got finished and it was time to get a graphic novel, what did that look like? You didn't go to your film contacts. What was the idea of, okay, I have my graphic novel, how do I get it out to somebody? Was it always the idea of self-publishing, or was it, let's go and try and find a publisher first?
Yeah, sure. Eric and I were discussing this at length, trying to think what's our next chess move. And we eventually decided that we should try to get an agent, sort of similar to an agent that you might have in film, a literary agent. So we just started cold knocking on agents' doors and sending emails, and one of them responded, and it was the Writers House agency in New York, who read it and loved it, and they took us as writers, as clients, and which is great. And that's not just for this book; that's for future books as well. So that's also put a bit of confidence under our belts that we can, we do know somewhat. We might have a career in graphic novels if we try. And then obviously the book is very particular. So that was shown. The agent showed it to a lot of publishers, and in the end we decided, look, let's just self-publish this thing. We've been working on it so long. Let's put it out there and move on with our careers, because we want to be working with the agent, with the Writers House, to be creating new work. So that's when we decided, let's not wait forever for the publishers to say yes or no. Let's put this out into the world. And that's when we had to learn about self-publishing, which was a whole other...
Yeah, that's a whole nother 7-hour conversation.
That's right.
But ultimately that worked for you. That was the smart move to just, let's get this guy out there. Let's birth this baby.
That's right. And in that regard, I think self-publishing is very much like the early days of independent filmmaking, because it allows anybody to take their product and show it to the world, and then leave the world to decide whether they like it or not. So in that regard, it was really exciting that we could simply put it on KDP or Ingram Spark, and a couple of weeks later, it's there for sale. It's really exciting.
Right. And I think now it's more than ever, we're not really in a world where people go into bookstores as much, and like they're and they think if you're not on the bookshelf, then you can't, then your book doesn't exist or something. Now, because everyone buys it online, it really kind of doesn't matter. Like self-publishing, the end result is almost the same anyway. So a lot of people don't even know.
I was going to say that's a very smart and intelligent and good answer, because I think that's always been the case with writers. Like, well, you don't want to self-publish because then you're done. But you're right. Where are you going to buy a book now anyway? When was the last time you saw a bookstore to begin with? You're going to buy it online. So if it's online, it's online. What's the difference? Yeah, that makes absolute total sense. So what's next? I mean, what's the next short 9-year project that you're going for? I mean, because we've only got so much time, guys.
Right. I mean, we're only going to be alive 30 more years, Sam. So
Max, if we're lucky.
So it's like 2 more books.
You can get a trilogy.
We only get 2 more chances.
That's right.
We've decided it's definitely not any more Whiteface Lies. No Whiteface Lies prequel, no sequel.
We're done. We are so done with that. I don't know that, Sam, what do you think? Like, we're still trying to figure out what kind of world we wanted our next thing to take place in, but we are going to really, I think, embrace the freedom of being able to kind of tell the kind of stories we want without worrying about how much it would cost to make as a film, and will it be based in a similar kind of world that the last one was in? Maybe not. Maybe it'll be something totally out there. Maybe it'd be something that spans many countries. Maybe it'd be something that takes place only in a familiar first world country situation. Sam?
Yeah, I don't think we've decided yet. I mean, but certainly probably our first step will just be sharing different memories and personal experiences and going from there, sort of like how we did on the last one.
Yeah. But definitely graphic novels. This is a strong path that you guys are gonna be walking.
I think so, and it's also tied to budget too, because to make a graphic novel is so much cheaper than making a feature film. A feature film nowadays is so expensive, and a graphic novel is much more expensive than a novel. But it's something that people can, if you find an illustrator and you work well with that illustrator, it's something that you can create. So for us, it's a tangible way that we can turn ideas into products.
Cool. I have to say again, the book really is good. I mean, I as having lived some of it in a very small way, it really is a great story. It really does flow. And as I was turning it with the cynical, angry, going, oh, very smart. Oh, good. Oh, nice twist. Excellent. I mean, really a very enjoyable book. And I'm not just saying that because, Sam, we're friends, but it really is a very good book. So I do highly recommend everybody go get it. It is a very fun piece. So tell us what's the best way to get this book and get you guys a few shekels for your 12-year journey.
Probably simplest is www.amazon.com. Just type in Whiteface Lies and you're good to go.
Well, I was going to say, where else would you go for anything that you would want anyway?
That's right.
And we're sponsored today by Jeff Bezos' idea, so here we are.
Right.
And for those, and again, just to make fun of Sam, for those English speakers, it's www.
Oh,
yeah, whatever.
That's true. And actually, it's a .com.au or .uk. Wherever you are on the planet, Amazon is everywhere.
Okay.
Sam, there is a higher quality version available, though, right? On a different site.
You can also get it on Barnes & Noble, which has got another high-quality version. That's one of the choices you make when you're self-publishing, too, is what quality of printing do you want to go with? And we decided we'd worked so long on this that Amazon, we just went for the highest quality printing version that they offered, and the same with the Barnes & Noble version. So when you do buy a copy of it, it's not a cheaply printed copy. It is the highest one that they.
Oh wow! Yeah, I was impressed. It did have a nice weight to it. It was a book. It wasn't it wasn't rubbing off on my fingers. I was like, ooh, this is a book. This is a real book. This is a real book.
There we go.
This is a very nice book. I it's been sitting under my notes, so we'll have to do the proverbial selfie with it when we're done.
Good.
So it's good. All right, well, guys, thank you so much, Eric Flanagan and Sam Voutas. You guys are tremendous from Manila and Australia, and we're here in San Francisco. So awesome, guys. Thank you so very much. So there you have it. Some great advice about entering a career of art and design. And as more and more art and design career opportunities are on the rise, employers are always on the hunt for the next generation of talented and, of course, skilled creative professionals. At Academy of Art University, you will get those work-ready skills that employers want. You can study on-site in downtown San Francisco or anywhere in the world with our online programs. To request more information about our 40-plus areas of study in art and design, including game development, fashion design, photography, UX design, and more, just visit our website at academyart.edu/creativemind.